Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and CPS issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and today I have a return guest. Her name is Ann O'Keefe Rodgers. She's been on before, and we're going to talk about a Parental Alienation Awareness Day. Now, to honor alienated parents next month on International Parental Alienation Day, Epiphany Awaits is offering a faith-based retreat for alienated parents with both in-person and a Zoom option on April 23rd through the 25th of 2021 at the Resolution Center in Jacksonville, Florida. Only $100 for a weekend of support for the journey, with speakers including Dr. Mark Roseman and other professionals focused on guidance, friendship, and compassion. And there will be more details as we talk in this podcast, but seating is limited and discounts applies to registration before March 15th. However, after March 15th, there will be a $125 registration fee. Scholarships are available. Email requests for application and registration form to epiphaniesawait@gmail.com. I will spell that out, which is EPIPHANIESAWAIT@gmail.com. So now we're going to talk about letting the healing begin at the From Sorrow to Strength retreat. And we're going to talk about, the how did we get this idea for this retreat to come about?
Very good. Well, Marianne, I want to first thank you so much for all the work you're doing to help targeted parents worldwide with your podcasts and your focus on resources, healing, and being able to really deal with this trauma of parental alienation. The retreat that we're going to be having next month over the weekend of International Parental Alienation Awareness Day. Every April 25th, worldwide, the trauma of parental alienation is recognized. It's recognized with court proclamations in this country as well as in other countries. But the reason for having one day set aside for awareness of this problem of parental alienation, we really need to look at the solutions and how to heal from this trauma. And a common theme that we've seen consistently, time after time after time, is resilience. And anytime a human being goes through a trauma, an adverse experience, it calls for resilience and strength and character. And the resilience that targeted parents need when one is going through court battles, personal battles, financial struggles, relationships rupturing, including the relationships sometimes with our own children, who previously we had very loving relationships with. It calls for the birth of a new person, a new source of strength and resilience. And what's interesting, Marianne, is that recently there's been a whole field of research devoted to human resilience. And Brene Brown is a celebrity who's done a lot of research on this. I recently took a course by Dr. Ann Maston about resilience in children. And Dr. Ann Maston talked about what's called ordinary magic. And that's a term that Dr. Maston has come up with for magic that children typically have when they go through a traumatic experience. And I think it's really important that we think about the ordinary magic that adults have. Mm-hmm. Because, Marianne, you and I have been at this for a little while. We know a lot of professionals in the field, and we know targeted parents who are resilient and others who might be really struggling with that resilience. And I'd love to know, because you've had a lot of guests on your podcast, Marianne, if what you've seen and the different guests that you've had, I'd love to know your thoughts on that as well, as far as what you've seen as far as that quality of resilience.
I've had guests on, such as Rod McCall, Dr. Mark Roseman, and what they have done with trauma in their lives. They've written books. They've plugged forward. It's, other people that have gone out and tried to change the legislature. Like I had Ken Joyce on, but that was over in Ireland. But that's okay because this is a global problem,
Mm-hmm.
and we need parents to help build each other up, to keep going and not cave in.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
hard to do when they're saying, "Oh, financially, this is draining me." And I get it. It is. It's a nightmare in family court because it is so corrupt. And
Yes.
right.
And it is corrupt. It's a broken system. It really is a broken legal system in this country and in other countries too. But you nailed it, Marianne, when you said change. That word of change. We know that divorce brings change on the macro level and the micro level. So it can either make us change for the better or for the worse.
mm-hmm.
And that resilience piece comes when we make the changes for the better, when we recognize the good parts of the marriage, because there's always good parts of a marriage, even though it can be sometimes a struggle to see, and to let go of the unhealthy parts.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned several people who've working for change and legislation, written books with an eye to change some of the mental health treatments and therapies. You and I both know, Marianne, there are PA competent therapists, and there are some therapists who are not PA competent.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are professionals who are working to make those changes on the macro level, either in the courts or in the mental health field or in the support field. And then it's really incumbent on each targeted parent to look at the changes on the micro level. What am I doing for a positive change?
Mm-hmm.
I have coached several targeted parents, and in the early stages of alienation, when the parent realizes that that's what's going on, it is very, very easy to make changes that are not so healthy and not so good. And it's very important to find mentors, coaches, therapists who can help the targeted parent make the best choice possible, because the natural spillover is going to be on the child.
Mm-hmm.
When the parent is healthy, even though they're not married to the other parent anymore, it's going to spill over to the child.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more and more research that's done on resilience in targeted parents and in that population, the more we're going to be able to help, the more we're going to be able to provide the resources that are necessary. And speaking just for myself, it wasn't until I met another targeted mom in Ohio that my healing really began. And she would say the same about me, how I helped her and she helped me. And that's where there needs to be more attention drawn to the sources of resilience, the sources of strength for targeted parents. And it's, as you and I both know, Marianne, often on social media, there are plenty of forums where it's just a whine session, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, whining about how awful my ex was, is, and evermore shall be. And that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it doesn't mean necessarily that there aren't patterns of behavior that are really, really unhealthy. That could very well be the case. But perhaps that energy could be turned to looking at, okay, what can I control? What can I change? I can learn the best possible parenting practices. I can learn to be the fullest version of myself. I can learn to identify the parts of my parenting and my relationships that are blind spots. Because every human being has blind spots, every single one of us. And so when we recognize that we have blind spots and we address those, we can grow and we can have healthier relationships. And that's really what we need as individuals. And again, it's what our children need. So that when they're ready, they will have a full parent that they're coming back to. Not an angry parent, not a bitter parent, not a parent who trash talks the other parent, and not a parent who's going to get into the nitty-gritty details of a marriage that went south. And that's not necessarily healthy in every situation. Obviously, each parent has to make a decision depending on the age of the child, what to share and what not to share. But again, I'm just going to keep going back to resilience. And if we work on what we can control, we work on the trying to reduce the impact of our own blind spots in our relationships so that, we can be the best spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, a friend, daughter, sister, aunt, cousin, etc., neighbor, coworker. That is the goal. That is what our children want, and that's what they need.
Mm-hmm. I also think parents going through the family court process also need to find supportive people to talk to that have gone through it. Like on Facebook, someone said, it was the parents grieving over living children. And they said, who lives where, so we can have support people. So I, put my name in there, and I actually met someone in my city.
Amazing.
And we actually clicked, and we had a lot to talk about. And we had been meeting like every week to every other week for coffee and talking. And it wasn't just a whining, crying session. We were talking about other things, about, like stores we wanted to go to and, like look at stuff. And, but it was just nice to have someone to hang around with that understood the mechanisms of the turning the child against you, that and getting them to hate you just out of sheer revenge.
Exactly.
And I think you're better off finding a support one-on-one system, whether it be a counselor, and I'm talking a counselor that understands family court and understands the corruption of the family court. So I was very fortunate to be led to a counselor that she worked in the family court system. So she knew the underhandedness. She knew what was going on. And she knew, as I was telling her my case, and we would talk about that, and coping mechanisms, but people that truly understand. Friends are great, but if they haven't been through this, I mean, I do have compassionate friends, but I have, lost some friends on the way because they don't get it. I don't know.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's some who get it, whether they're friends or family members, quite frankly.
Right.
There are family members who they don't have the time or emotional energy to really understand that dynamic that you're
Hmm.
talking about.
And that's a good point too. I should have brought up family members because it's like my family is so small. All I have really now is my father. And I won't discuss my kids. I don't want to take that into the podcast, but it's just, aunts and uncles that have abandoned you and perhaps gone onto the dark side
Hmm.
and sided perhaps with the ex. That happens. And
Hmm.
you need to be mentally strong to kind of like blow that off and say, I don't need these people in my life anyway. What purpose did they serve to begin with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And being able to cut slack, and whether you have a large family or a small family, um, I know there's one gal in one of the Mark David Roseman support groups. She has 8 children, um, 6 of whom are alienated, 2 of whom are not. And in her extended family, including her mother and her siblings, there are some who get it and some who don't. And so she knows that those are the ones she can lean on for support. And the other ones, she just has to keep her expectations very realistic. And that's where it's so it's so challenging, because there is so much stigma in our society about parents, whether mothers or fathers, who either lose custody or have the 6-hour week and every other weekend parenting schedule, and the judgments and the shaming, either within a family structure or in society. It's very strong, and it's very difficult to go through. And it takes that resilience. It takes being with other parents on the journey. I wanted to mention something else. I'm so glad that you touched on the alienated parent that you met in your area. Dr. Mark Roseman also offers meet and greets, which are complimentary. He usually offers them once or twice a month. And these meet and greets are for alienated parents anywhere in the country to just get together, hang out on Zoom, and be able to have a place where there is none of that judgment or shaming, because everybody's on that same journey of parental alienation, but with an eye to being strong, being resilient, being the fullest version of themselves, even while going through that trauma. And that would be an example of something virtually that is now available that wasn't there a year ago, because Dr. Mark, I believe he started his company, it was a little over a year ago. And so what I'm saying is there's resources now that are available for alienated parents that weren't there previously. And that's some really, really good news, that there's affordable, free resources. He also has support groups. We just finished one, a 6-week series of support group, and there were parents from all across the country, West Coast, Midwest, and East Coast. And it was amazing. Marianne, I just want to share briefly about that, because there were 8 alienated parents and 4 facilitators. And like I said, the parents range from all across the country. And at the end of the 6 weeks, Marianne, there was a camaraderie and a support system that those 8 parents now, they know that they can contact anyone in any of the other 7 parents, and if they need help in the future, and that is a real gift.
Mm-hmm.
To have 7 new friends who know your story, who accept you, and are there to cheer you on, and to, if you need to cry and vent, they're there for you. If they need a tip or an insight, they can share that with you, and then vice versa. And that is the power. I was really, really blown away by how well it was done. And Dr. Mark provided the kickoff and then the finale. And he used some of the concepts from his book, Preserving Family Ties, as some of the guideposts for the support group. And everybody who completed that 6-week series was just delighted, was very, very happy that they did that. So I'm not saying that necessarily just because I'm trying to promote Dr. Mark's group, but there is so much power in support groups like that. And I think it's important for anybody who's listening, if you feel like you're the only one going through parental alienation and nobody in your circle gets it or understands you, I really, really encourage you to find a support group or a meet and greet or some other peer-led support so that you will remember you're not the only one. You are not the only other one on the journey. There's no need to reinvent the wheel, because what you're going through, other parents have gone through, and most of us are more than willing to help.
Mm-hmm. And the thing also for these parents that are looking for support, they've also got to be careful when they are, on social media looking for support and finding an advocate. And this advocate has to be mentally strong as well, almost pretty much mentally strong as a counselor. Even if they don't have a counseling degree, they cannot say, I've had enough, I can't take anymore. I'm going to stay off of social media for a while. If you're going to be an advocate, you are there to help everyone at all times.
Absolutely.
And that's just my opinion. And I myself have been talking to parents on the phone, and they're sharing with me their horror stories of CPS and what they're being put through. And, it gets you riled up, to be honest, but you got to stay strong for them and offer suggestions and, who they can write to and things like that. I mean, you can't, if you're going to talk to people and even be a support person, you can't just say, wait, you're upsetting me too. I can't talk about this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be strong for each other. And that's the big part, is just, put yourself aside when you're talking to someone that you just met that's going through a lot of these issues, and just help them and focus on them.
Right. Absolutely. Focus on them and use the energy of truly listening. And that's a skill that's going to help if and when your children choose to come back,
Mm-hmm.
because we need to be able to truly listen to them in their pain of what they have gone through. So it's very important to be able to be a really, really good listener.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, you think, well, it's hard to be a good listener when you've been through all this stuff and now you're hearing it all over again, but that's all new for that person. So you now have experience that you can say, well, this is my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, but this is what I would do. And my advice is always saying, get it in an affidavit, make several copies. You keep the original and you give your attorney the copies, because they lose everything. I'm sorry to say.
You're not their only client.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I just, I want to help people, and, I don't want them to fall into the trap that, I've fallen into. And other people are falling into these traps because the family court is so corrupt. And what they're doing is they are perpetuating the alienation between the parent and the child. And they know they're doing it so they can collect Title 4D funding.
Hmm.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Right. Right. Yes. And they're not stupid, and for them, it is about money. It's not about the best interest of the child. And the child should have the ability to love both parents without any interference.
And that's true. It's the problem is that there's just so much interference, and this has got to stop. I don't know how it will stop. I wish I had an answer as how to stop, and how do you stop $1 billion program, and so many people are profiting off of it, and parents are suffering along with the children who are either being, taken away and given to the abusive parent, and or they're given into foster care where they will soon be child trafficked. There's just so many, we could go down so many rabbit
Yes,
holes, and we don't want to
yes,
do
I
that.
know, I know. We could, and there are resources
Mhm.
for those kiddos in foster care. I know of one alienated parent. She's actually trying to build a nonprofit to serve kiddos in foster care who may have been caught up in that system,
Mhm.
and the profit making that goes on with that. But she's been able to take her alienation experience and turn it into a service for kids who've been in the foster care program for really bad circumstances. So there's some good news there, some hope.
Yeah, that's an excellent example of taking a bad situation and, you know, setting it aside. There's really nothing you can do about it right now. If you want to wait for your kids to come back, in the meantime, do something positive to help other people.
Exactly. Exactly. Because in her particular situation, there was no justification at all. There was nothing that the court ever found that would justify her rights being taken away, other than the fact that her ex had more money and animosity. That's what it came down to. It was a combination of greater net worth and higher level of animosity.
Mhm.
And so I've seen that in time after time in different cases. So one has a choice in that situation. One can either wallow in the pain that there was no real reason why her rights were terminated, but she chose to take that energy and that pain to serve other kiddos so that they would have less pain.
Mhm. That's what you have to do to stay busy. And I always tell parents to stay busy, you know, pick up some cheap hobby, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and,
Mm-hmm.
and they also said, I read somewhere that even staying busy is a bad thing. But I don't know, in my case, I'm just staying extremely busy, and I think it's helpful for me at least.
Absolutely. Well, and it goes back to one's thought world. If one wants to be as the best version of oneself, one wants to have a healthy thought world. And if you're busy with a project that is life-giving, that is helping others, that is serving others, then that's a good thing.
Mhm. And I feel bad for these parents that are bitter and they're projecting bitterness onto these other parents that are struggling, and those are the people you stay away from.
Yes.
I'm not trying to say everything's all lollipops and rainbows, but you need to find a parent that understands and is strong enough to discuss things with you or with that parent, so they have someone to rely on if they don't have a counselor or family members to talk to. They need a strong person to, not curl up in a ball and or get angry for some reason at you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's how, okay, so we've really touched on some really important topics for alienated parents, Marianne, and we've got the theory. We know the goal. The goal is health and healing and going from sorrow to strength. And that is why we chose to have the retreat April 23rd to 25th over that weekend of International Parental Alienation Awareness Day. And we chose the name of that retreat, From Sorrow to Strength, because precisely that reason. We do not want to stay in the bitterness. We don't want to stay in the sorrow. And alienated parents have a very unique sorrow because they've lost their children not by choice.
Mm-hmm.
So they now have a choice to take that sorrow, take that energy, take that pain, and put it to purpose. So the faith-based retreat that we're having that weekend of April 23rd, we have 15 spots for the in-person portion of the retreat, and it's going to be at the Resolution Center in Jacksonville, Florida. And there's also a Zoom option. So we have limited seating for the in-person because of COVID restrictions. I really, really encourage people to consider coming to the in-person because there is a power of in-person support that you simply can't replace. Now, for those who cannot make it in person, we'll have the Zoom. But I just wanted to go over a little bit of the details for the retreat, especially for those who can make it in person.
Sure, go ahead.
We're having a meet and greet Friday night at a local restaurant that's close to the Resolution Center, and that's Friday night when people are arriving from out of town, and we will have airport pickups. That's free and complimentary. And then one of our retreat organizers found a block of rooms at a hotel that's only 5 blocks away from the Resolution Center. It's at the South Bank Hotel. The room rate's only $99 a night, and it's a luxury hotel. It's beautiful. It sits right on the St. Johns River, and it's very, very nice. And the retreat sessions, most of them will take place Saturday morning. We're starting at 9 a.m. and we'll be going till about 4 to 5 p.m., breaking for lunch midway through. And then we're going to have a dinner gathering at the beach on the Atlantic Ocean. So Resolution Center is only about 30 minutes away from the beach. So that's where we'll have our dinner on Saturday night. And then Sunday morning, we'll have 2 more sessions before everybody goes back on Sunday afternoon. Throughout the weekend, we're going to have some time blocked out for parents of any faith, right? So there's both Jews and Christians who are presenting the seminar talks, but there's going to be time blocked out for worship on Friday night for those of the Jewish tradition, and for those of the Christian tradition on both Saturday night as well as Sunday morning. And that's because Many alienated parents have found so much strength and resilience in their faith. It is an ecumenical weekend, which means you do not have to have a certain denomination to attend and to benefit. We are honoring all faith traditions this weekend, and it's really important that that's understood, because we respect any faith tradition. We want to honor the fact that, like I said, many alienated parents have found so much strength in their faith tradition after alienation. And Dr. Mark will be touching on that, as well as the other speakers too. There's another speaker, her name is April, and she is going to be doing a mind, body, spirit exercise where we're going to be doing some stretching, somewhat similar to Pilates, but it's going to be releasing that sorrow, releasing that stress that goes along with alienation, so that we can do the transformation from sorrow to strength. And that's going to be one of the many takeaways that the parents who attend this weekend will have, like a new way to stretch, whether one does it in the morning or in the evening before bed, to be able to release the stress. Another one of the presenters is Adina, and she is going to be touching on the nutritional aspects of stress and what we can do with our diet to lower our stress levels so that we can be as healthy as we possibly can on this journey of parental alienation. So I wanted to kind of give a little sneak peek at what the retreat is about and what some of the themes are, so that alienated parents who are considering attending, they'll know a little bit. And we'll also have breakout sessions as well. At the Resolution Center, the seminars will be held in a classroom that can accommodate 15, but then we also will have breakout sessions of smaller groups. So there'll be opportunity for that throughout the weekend, so that there can be new connections made among the participants.
That sounds excellent. I think that's what people need. And they need to be around other people that have it. It's just going to be great because it's ecumenical. Everyone's going to get and take away something from this. So it'll be a good learning experience for all parents going through this, and to, come out better. So and hopefully when their children do return, they're in a better frame of mind and they're not stuck in the anger mode of what had happened to them.
And so many times when one lays eyeballs on another alienated parent who's on that same journey, that sometimes that's all it takes.
Right. And the letting go of the anger is something that concerns me, because there's so many people that have not let go of the past and the anger. And I guess how I dealt with that was, just doing my paintings and not thinking about it. Like I compartmentalized a lot of the court functions, and that's what I did. I compartmentalized. And then you had people saying, well, what happened? What happened? Why don't you have your kids? And then it got to the point where I knew I had to write a book, but I didn't want to.
Yes.
Because it's like, I don't want to relive all this stuff. What is this going to take? And it took 2 months, from 6:30 a.m. to when my husband got home around 6, for 2 months straight to get this done.
Wow.
It was horrible. And, but it was, what, at least it's over. And you know what? My version of the story is out there now. You can hear my version. You can read all the transcripts you want, and they're in there. But what also is included in that book is not just my story, but it's talking about personality disorders. Dr. Roseman's excerpts are in there. Ed Crook's excerpts are in there. It's to help people. It's almost like a guide, a handbook for parents. Even if you're not going through family court, but you've got parental alienation problems, that's in there too. It has a mix of like everything in there.
Wow.
It explains also Title 4D, narcissism, but other personality disorders. Karen Woodall is quoted in there as well as Dr. Craig Childress. But it's to help people, and that's what parents should do, is maybe force themselves to write a book.
Yes. Yes. And journaling is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not a book that ever gets published, Marianne,
Right.
journaling, and then the beauty of a journal is excerpts can be pulled out that could be shared as a book or with one's child when the time is right in the future. And there is so much power to writing that down,
Mm-hmm.
writing, putting one story down and releasing it, and releasing any of the anger, any of the pain. And when one does that, there is that process of release.
Mm-hmm.
And that is supremely important to heal the family dynamic. That family dynamic is broken, and it's important that we are the ones who take that responsibility to make it as healthy as it can be in the realm that we can control.
Mm-hmm. And that's very important what you said, in the realm that we can control. We can't control what other people are going to do. We can't control what our kids are going to do. We can't control when they're going to come back. But if we have good support systems, and this retreat would be very helpful to a lot of people, because they could meet other parents that they could stay in touch with for a long time,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
meet new friends.
New friends that will be forever friends.
Right.
And that is what we need on this journey, is forever friends.
And that's what it really is, because you will always keep in touch with that friend, saying, well, how's it going on your end? I haven't heard anything on my end. What's new? And they may say, well, my child reached out, and we talked for a while, but then we'll just see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the thing is like to also set your want of that as well. Like you would want your child to reach out, but also encourage that parent. Yeah, I hope they reach out again. Let's hope and pray they do that.
Exactly.
It's a part of
Exactly.
putting your sadness aside, and if someone else is having success, encourage them, keep it going.
To celebrate that success with them, truly, and to know that eventually your time will come, when that time comes, in a plan that's bigger than us.
Mm-hmm.
But we have the responsibility to make sure that we are in the best possible place.
And that's a part of being healthy and emotionally healthy. And you could take up, like I said, a hobby, and say your child comes back to you and you start a conversation. And, sometimes it's hard to start a conversation when nothing has been said for years. And you can start talking about your hobby. Hey, do you have any hobbies? Well, I started this. It just helps also to add to the conversation that could draw them in more.
Right, right. And the more that we are mindful of where our thought world is, and we're doing what we can to make sure our thought world is healthy, we'll be able to share that with our child.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we have to move from sorrow to strength. And there's strength in numbers. And the more of us, you know, that become friends with other parents going through this, maybe there could be, the strength to approach the legislature, pull out, maybe write up new bills, get together, maybe 4 of yous that, if hopefully you're ready enough to do this, to write up a bill, come up with a bill for, you know, uh, like in the midst of a divorce, you can't take the child away unless there's some horrible circumstance. But you know what I mean? Just
Right,
put your heads together and come up with something.
right. Come up with something, and also just to know that you're not alone.
Right. And no one's ever alone. And some people think they are, but they need to reach out to the right people. And that's why I think this retreat would be a very good thing. And I hope there is a lot of attendance because people could seriously benefit from this.
That is our hope and prayer, Marianne. And I'm grateful that you're spending the time on it and that you're giving it the attention, because this is not something that we're out to do for us. It's for alienated parents in the community, and that is what we need to do, because the more that we focus on each other's needs and not stay so stuck in our own, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, that totally sums it up. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
If anybody has any questions about the retreat or anything that I've mentioned, whether it's the support group or the meet and greets or anything, you can certainly reach me through the contact information that Marianne's going to be providing. And I want to make sure everybody listening knows that very important thing: you are not alone. You are not alone. And it's very, very important to remember that when you're lying in bed at night and you can't get back to sleep because you miss your children so much, please remember that you are not alone and you do have help.
That's right. And do you mind if I reread the Parental Alienation Awareness Day just for the end listeners? How about that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, to honor alienated parents next month on International Parental Alienation Day, Epiphany Awaits is offering a faith-based retreat for alienated parents with both in-person and a Zoom option on April 23rd through the 25th. 2021 at the Resolution Center in Jacksonville, Florida. Only $100 for the weekend of support for the journey, with speakers including Dr. Mark Roseman, who's awesome, and other professionals focused on guidance and friendship and compassion. Seating is limited and discounts applies to registrations before March 15th. However, after March 15th, it will be a $125 registration fee. Scholarships are available. Email request for application and registration form to epiphaniesawait@gmail.com, and that's EPIPHANIESAWAIT@gmail.com. I will also have that included in my podcast notes as well. So I encourage everyone to go to this. It will be a really good thing to attend, learn from, and take away a friend with you even. So there is a lot of potential here and a lot to, I want to say, like a sponge, soak up. So I encourage everyone to go. And I thank you, Ann O'Keefe Rodgers, for coming on. And I'd like to have you back on again in the future if you like.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Marianne, for everything you are doing.
I appreciate, I don't mind. I'm here to help. That's what I always tell people. I'm here to help in any way I can and get this word across so parents won't have to suffer. We don't need to suffer in silence. Talk things out with people. There's people there that want to help. So I won't keep you all afternoon. I will have you back on again. And Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Join us again in the future with Anne and other guests. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Marianne. Thank you.